Scottish Provincial Silver Part 2. Now we're going to look at another spoon, which made me pose the question on Instagram late last year to people saying, what is the rarest Scottish Provincial mark that you can think of? And there was some pretty clever thinking, actually. A few people said it was the Dingwall mark, which is DWL, in a letterbox for Dingwall, and that's only recently been discovered over the last 2 or 3 years. A little handful of teaspoons turned up. Other people suggested the Stonehaven town mark, a set of individual punches almost spelling out Stonehaven. That's certainly one of the great rarities of Scottish Provincial silver. And there are also unusual marks. There's James Erskine of Aberdeen, very commonplace maker, but his cockerel mark alongside the boar's head mark, that's quite unusual. So there were lots of good suggestions, but then somebody said, that if not the rarest, certainly the most difficult to find is the lamb and flag mark used at Perth. And this is quite true. And the lamb and flag was used as an early town mark for Perth because it's the symbol of St John. And in the later medieval period, Perth was also known as St John's Town or St John's. So that's why you get that, the use of that as a town mark. But it was used in the late 17th and in the very early 18th century, and then it disappears. It's a very complicated punch, figure of a lamb with a flag, as you can imagine, quite a large punch. It was, the last use of it was in tandem with the marks WS, a thistle and an S, believed to be for William Scott of Perth, working in Perth around 1720, 1730. Now, only last year I purchased this, and this is again fabulous Scottish tablespoon, lovely thick heavy gauge, lovely pronounced rib, all the features. If I turn it round, just hide the marks for a moment, turn it round and you see it's got those script initials. If I don't reflect my ugly mug in it, there we go. Script initials, very light, very airy script initials, typical of Scottish silver from the first half of the 18th century. And it has a series of marks on the back of it. Now it has the WS mark. It has the thistle mark. You'll often find thistles not only on Edinburgh silver, but you'll see it used throughout Scottish Provincial silver, partly to ape the fact that it was used in Edinburgh and partly because it's a national emblem. And the S for sterling. Sterling silver in Scotland being a slightly lower standard than it was in England at the time. You would hope then that the fourth mark that was struck on it would be this extremely rare lamb and flag, and I could sell this and go on holiday to Bermuda or, Inverary, whichever took my fancy. And it wasn't. It was a different mark. And this is why I had posed the question, what do you think is the rarest Scottish Provincial mark? Well, I would make an argument that the rarest Scottish Provincial mark is the one that no one's ever seen before. And I thought this was the case with this mark when I looked at it. I did ask the opinion before I started shooting my mouth off of two very well-respected researchers and collectors in the field who have been doing it since I was in short pants, Tuesday. No, 40 years ago. And neither of them had seen or even heard reference to this mark. So I was pretty sure it's quite rare. I believed it to be unique. One other spoon came with this, actually. The impression on that was very, very worn indeed. So I didn't count that one. That found a new home anyway. Latterly, I have found that there is one example in the collections of the National Museums of Scotland, but they don't say what it is because I don't think they know either. It's a very intriguing mark, and it is in fact the figure of a unicorn, but not the unicorn that you see on some Dumfries silver, which is just a unicorn's head. It is the full figure of what I've christened a prancing, because I am rather elaborate and quite floral, a prancing unicorn. And you probably can't see, it's that second mark along there. I will put a picture up of that so you can see it properly. And it's intriguing because this is clearly a replacement for the lamb and flag mark. And we know that Scott the Elder and Scott the Younger did travel, and they worked in different areas. And this might possibly be a little bit later than those lamb and flag marks that were seen, that are ascribed to 1725. Now, is it possible that Scott moved somewhere else, somewhere very briefly, and hallmarked a spoon using all the same punches that were generic punches, his maker's mark, a thistle and an S for sterling, but he was working somewhere else, so he had to remove the lamb and flag. That was a Perth mark. That was saying it was made in Perth. And he replaced it with a unicorn. Now, you're all saying, why did he replace it with a unicorn? That's not very Scottish, is it? Do they have unicorns in Scotland? Well, actually, they may not have them in Scotland, but it is the Scottish national heraldic beast. Just as we have lion supporters on the coat of arms in the United, if not the United Kingdom, in England. Don't get any of that mixed up. I don't want to fall into any of that trouble, I'll tell you. The unicorn was the heraldic beast of the Scottish coat of arms, and it's been used here with very elaborate effect. It's just we don't know where it's for. It may be somewhere quite mundane. Scott may have moved to somewhere that isn't very exceptional, but just made an exceptional mark for it. It may be that he moved somewhere for a very brief period where there was no silversmithing. So it's a very intriguing mark, this prancing unicorn, and it is presently one of only 2 clear impressions of this mark, and it hadn't been seen by anybody else in the last 40 years. So these things slip through, you see. This is the point. We think we know it all, but we don't. It's all, if you're eagle-eyed, it's all out there waiting to be found. So this is very interesting. If any of you, for goodness sake, have got anything else with this mark on it, I would love to see it. And maybe we could find out. It would be lovely if this hadn't been initials, if it had been a crest for a family, and that could give us a location. That would have been great. That's probably asking too much. That's asking for your cake and eating it, I'm afraid. But it is. I mean, I'm glad to, apart from the National Museums of Scotland, nobody else has this mark. It's extremely rare. Extremely rare. Arguably, for the moment, until, half a dozen turn up. Even then, another half dozen turn up, they'd be extremely rare. It is the rarest mark struck on a piece of Scottish Provincial silver, and on a fabulous spoon too. So I'm delighted to show you that, and to sort of give you a kickstart into, if you haven't thought of it before, Scottish Provincial silver. Huge area, lots of collecting. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. You can probably go online and buy a really nice Aberdeen teaspoon for 15-20 quid. It doesn't have to cost the earth, and you'll get as much satisfaction from that. But what's wonderful with Scottish Provincial is when you have become familiar with most of the marks and you go out into the wide world, and then you see something nestling in a box of electroplate, and actually you reach in and you say, no, this is... You don't say it out loud because the dealer will whip it off you. But you think to yourself, this is a piece of Scottish Provincial, rare Scottish Provincial silver, and it's priced at 50p. And I have done it Many years ago I've done it, but I have done it. I've reached in and bought that rarity for 50p and gone off and sold it for a fortune, 40, 50 quid. Lived the high life. Dancing girls, wine, none of that. So this is the attraction of it. Keep looking. Good hunting. You will find things but you've got to put in the work to find out about them. That's the downside. It's like everything in life, I'm afraid. You've got to put the work in, and eventually you get the rewards. You get to be that odious, smug person like me that's got the rarest. Yeah, someone will disagree with me. Somebody now said someone in a tartan and waving his shillelagh at me. If that's what they do, that's probably the wrong country, isn't it? But someone will be saying they've got a rarer spoon than this. But show me another unicorn and I shall yield. Until then, I think I've got the rarest Scottish provincial spoon in the world. It's all out there. So good hunting, and for now, goodbye.